I just realized it means we weren't recording during my Hamilton soliloquy. But here we are. Now we're recording. Welcome to the podcast, HPTV, with Mitchell, Jamie, and Steven back again. We're going to talk about Order of the Phoenix. But Jamie, first, I wanted to hear your review of John Lithgow on Smartless.
It was really good. It was a really good episode of Smartless.
Our rival podcast. Sorry to promote them.
Clearly. I mean, they just sold again for the second time for like $120 million or something. We're right behind them.
Are you the Jason Bateman? I'm clearly the Will Arnett, so okay.
Anyway. Sean.
Nah.
Funny joke on that. Isaac was asking because you guys have been really busy. Steven literally got off a cruise today. Mitchell just came back from Hamilton. We weren't sure we were going to record on our normal day. And my husband's like, well, if it comes out a little late, it's not like you have like a ton of fans waiting on your podcast. I was like, hey, we have Rachel and we have Tim. We might have two Tims. We do get more listens than that. I don't know who they are, but appreciate. Anyway, it was a good interview. He did mention Dumbledore more than I thought. So this was recorded the weekend of the Oscars.
Oh, Oscars. That's what I meant.
Oscars. So this was just like 2 days or whatever after it had kind of been leaked and started being announced. And so I feel like he probably I don't know if he got in trouble for like talking about being Dumbledore, but it was like really fresh. So he mentioned a few things. He talked about the age thing and he said something kind of sweet. And this is what we talked about, how, established actors might want to do this as like a consistent thing in their career. And so he talked about, it is kind of nice. I'm turning 80. He's like, this is going to take up the next 8 years of my life. And that's a pretty nice, consistent way as an actor to do that. Instead of like, he's like made a joke about instead popping in and out, playing senile old people during that time. And he talked about, again, because Sean Hayes on there is doing Goodnight Oscar in London this summer. And so he brought that up. And he's like, oh, I'll be on London this summer. He's like, oh, I'll be there doing Dumbledore. So, again, we already knew, but he mentioned that was a mention. And he just talked about how he's reading the books. And this was in January, so hopefully he's a lot further. But he was halfway through Chambers. So it's good to know he's reading the books. I wish he would have read the books before he accepted. Because when you're going to be AA...
He hasn't read the books yet? Come on.
No, he had not read the books. He's reading them now.
He was
a little old when they came. I mean, not old, but like an adult when they came out.
I mean, he was, 50? That's a whole different phase of life.
Didn't want to read children's books? Come on.
I feel like he should have been reading them to Joseph Gordon-Levitt on the set of Third Rock from the Sun.
I mean, come on, it was a cultural phenomenon. You read that shit, John, but it's okay. As long as he didn't screw it up, we'll forgive him.
It's funny that he's mentioned it in a few things now, and Warner Brothers still hasn't confirmed it, and he's just rolling with it.
I will say that is like the personality of John Lithgow that I kind of think does capture Dumbledore a little bit, that he's just like, kind of just like, oh, whatever. But it also kind of says that he does not realize and probably doesn't care about like the fan reaction to it. Like he doesn't realize how big of a deal this is probably to a lot of people. And he's probably not online reading the comments and people's Reddit angry stuff about
probably
it.
healthy.
So good for him. Good for him. But hopefully, he stays healthy. Get your scans every year. That's all I
thought you were going to say that he said on the podcast, being like, this is my last, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to ride it out. 88, I'll be done. He didn't
really say that because he did mention, he kind of made like a casual, like, oh, Dumbledore might not be too much or something. So I was like, you better take this a little more seriously, sir. But, he's Shakespearean trained actor. I'm going to hope that he takes this seriously and lives. That's all.
Believe in him.
Did he talk about the fact that this may literally be his last role? Like he could croak.
He said, I'm turning 80. And then, of course, they're like, oh, you don't even look 80, blah, blah, blah. And that this should be the next 8 years. So it is kind of a nice, consistent thing to have in the next 8 years. But he seems like the guy, like he literally mentioned that he's going to be doing a play this summer. So either at the same time or right before Dumbledore. But he did talk about it's going to be difficult because they're pretty much going to have to like move to London and like his kids are established here and all that kind of stuff.
Aren't his kids old?
Yeah, but his grandkids and stuff he likes to see,
He'll have time.
Why is he talking about 8 years though? I thought it was going to be 10 years. What's happening here?
I
Maybe
think
8 years of filming
8.
and then the post after that
I'm
or something like that. Maybe that's
of filming.
Okay.
And he's technically
with
only a little bit in the last one.
Yeah, that's very true.
A lot of it's
They should film that first.
younger kid version of Dumbledore stuff. Maybe they can get get a Jude Law to come in and do some of those scenes with him from further back in the day.
Well, I will say Michael Gambon, I always thought, I was like, oh, other than a few things in Goblet, like it's all right. But he did annoy me a couple of times in Order of the Phoenix. We'll get to it, but
we'll talk about that. We'll talk.
So different note on this, but like that kind of makes me think about like the King's Cross at the end, the ethereal one. What if that were like the Jude Law version or something like that? Because once Dumbledore's like gone, they could have any age version of Dumbledore be the one to show up as this.
I wonder if he's going to give
we may not have an option.
Maybe he'll give like his lifetime AI rights to Warner Brothers. He'll just be like, $100 million for my kids, and you can recreate whatever you want with my face.
Well, I do also, I've said this before, but I do also wonder, how many of those scenes could just be filmed ahead of time or something, too. That's, because those shorter ones.
Harry is going to age, so maybe first thing you film.
Well, if he's not going to be in season 7 much, then it's you film those scenes at the very end of season 6, right?
Yeah,
once that's all done, and then the kid won't have changed too much, and they can, digitally adjust whatever, and then he barely has to even show up for season 7. / may not have to be alive for season. I'm still worried about that. I'm telling you,
maybe his actual spirit can come and from the dead, do the dead Dumbledore. Anyway, I do want to get to Order of the Phoenix, but real quick, there seem to have been some fairly not substantiated. It's not deadline like we've seen for the first 3 bits of casting, but there seem to be some strong implications that discussions have taken place with Nick Frost to be Hagrid, which Jamie did call, and he has been fan casted quite well. I don't have that many thoughts. I think it's a fine. He's short, but that's fine. But I just think it's worth mentioning. And when I'm going to do a little bit of a Nick Frost dive so that when, if that gets made official like the other, or semi-official like the other ones have, then we'll come on and have some quick thoughts on it and stuff.
How about all the, I know we talked about this a little bit last time, but there's still a lot of ire about Black Snape out there. People are losing their crap.
Yeah, people just got to get over it. I don't know if I'm blind to if I'm just not seeing it. I'm not seeing many people who are just mad that they're diversifying to diversify. I think there have been pretty good that are just this is not accurate. We were promised accurate, or this changes race this is like a character where the race is going to have a negative effect.
Well, that's watching this movie today, I was like, oh, this scene is going to be just have such a different connotation. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we could get more of, which we'll get to, because I'm Goblet again. There was so much we wanted expanded because events happened. I was like, oh, Order, they don't need to expand on too much because it's a lot of thought. But no, there are so many things. I'm like, ooh, that could be a whole episode. That could be a whole episode. So let's jump into Order of the Phoenix. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me with this one is it came out the same summer as the 7th book, right? Or am I making that up?
I think this was I'm pretty sure. And this was my first out of high school. Yeah, my first adult Harry Potter. And I'm pretty sure that's when
Potter time.
Peak Potter.
Which is, it came out in 2007, directed by David Yates, the first, and he'll go on to direct the next 4 and the Fantastic Beasts films. And Jamie, you made this note. I didn't know this, so sorry to steal your thunder, but screenplay by Michael Goldenberg, the only movie not written by Steve Kloves, which is really interesting.
And I did read on there on Wikipedia, the greatest source. But it did say that Steve Kloves was basically exhausted at this point. He had pushed all these movies out. So they brought in someone else only for this movie, which is kind of interesting. And I thought he did a good job.
Well, and I had forgotten this because you guys mentioned it. I was pulling up what we're talking, though. It's just because, the movie Order of the Phoenix came out. And then it was 10 days later that book 7 was released. So that's pretty crazy. I didn't remember them being that on top of each other. But that's pretty crazy. That was a hop in time for the Potter world, man, getting those 2 big things dropped within a couple of weeks of each other.
My brain must have been exploding. That was a great summer. I remember. I didn't notice any huge gaps. I mean, obviously the same producing team, guys like David Heyman, J.K. Rowling is obviously fairly involved in a lot of the check-ins. So it's not surprising that you almost had David Heyman as a showrunner, and then you bring in the new director. So you have one guy connected to the previous 3-4 films, and you have one guy who's going to carry it the rest of the way, or both of them carry it the rest of the way. Kind of makes sense, almost like a showrunner, that it doesn't feel out of place compared to the rest. Although I 6 does some different things, but I think that's more directing. That's more David Yates doing something different, and trying to not make it feel the samey than the writing. But yeah, where do you guys have this one ranked in your film rankings? We're going to look at these at the end, and we're not going to have it perfectly. It's not going to be like...
So I'll say this, from here on out is like the point where I actually enjoy the movies. The other 4 movies, I don't love those movies. Like we've talked about, I mean, I've picked different pieces apart of them, and there's moments I love from the movies, but these next 4 movies I think are good movies. And I think what David Yates did coming in is he like thought of them more as movies than as adaptations, which is like good and bad in some ways. But this is my favorite book, so I'm really biased. This movie would be number 3 for me.
I've got it number 4. And Mitchell, remember, I laid out my rankings early on, and I haven't actually changed it. I watched the movies a couple times. I thought about changing them, but I've got 5. So 1 and 2 are high-ish on my list because of the nostalgia factor. Like there was that, we've got Potter. It's in theaters. You get the cast, and it's so exciting. I actually have 5 right between 1 and 2. So number 1 is third in my ranking. Number 5 is 4th, and then number 2 is 5th. And then from there it goes. Well, 4 and 3 are the last ones, so you can kind of figure out what's left to go where. But I thought, like Jamie said, I thought it was a good movie. Like watching it, I was like, I like this movie. I enjoy it. But I think there are other ones that are better. And of course, there are things missing from it that still irk me. But I do think overall it was a good movie. I think it's pretty well done. And I do think that this is kind of just because this is when David Yates comes in, like you were saying, this is where you kind of have the beginning of like the end, right? It's like his style, his directing kind of pulls it all the way through the end. And so this is kind of establishing that world. And at the time, I don't think we knew that. Did we know right away that he was going to be finishing out the series? I don't think we did.
I don't
we
know.
He was doing 1 or 2 movies, right?
I think it was around 6. I think it might have been after. Well, I guess there's only one more after that. It might have been around Half-Blood Prince where we kind of knew this is going to keep going. And I don't remember when we found out about the split. I actually think that'd be interesting to look at when that news broke that Deathly Hallows was going to be 2 films, and he was obviously it made sense to him to do both there. But
sure, it was a big deal. It started a trend. Potter did that first. But yeah, no, I think it was good. There's better ones, and so I like those.
I'm really torn, and I need to look through. I don't know what I put. Like I don't know what I put the other ones at. I'm terrible at this. We're gonna have to look around movie 8 because and Half-Blood Prince is gonna help give me some clarity because I know how I feel about Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2. Half-Blood Prince, I know there's moments I like, but I know it's a book that I like a lot, and there's some things they don't quite capture some of the mystery of the book. But they do a lot of fun things in it. And so right now I'm quite high on this one. I was thinking it could be as high as number 2. I think it's probably going to settle more around 3. I think there's something else, but I know Chamber of Secrets is 8, and I kind of know what my number 1 is, and there's a lot of 2, 3, 4 fighting going on. But I enjoyed watching it quite a lot. I don't have too many howlers, but we can go into those.
This is the first one I watched. Like I remember going to see this and thinking, like, especially with people who haven't read the books, and I was like, okay, I could see how people would enjoy this movie without having read the books compared to like the other ones before it. It just felt like so much was missing to me, and there is a lot missing from this, but they just make sense of it themselves within the story, so it kind of works. Anyway, howler away.
Well, first, my Michael Gambon complaint is, don't you all have studying to do? Like, calm down, man. Like,
it's like the troll version of Dumbledore or something, right?
I just
go around.
I get that he's frustrated in this movie. Like him and Harry are both very angsty.
Busy.
Yeah, he's busy. The thing is, I don't know if that comes together. like him being away and that frustration. I don't know how well that works.
He like just does this really nice thing, and then he's like, "All right, you little shits, get back to class." Like, it's like, oh, the kids are freaked out.
The thing from the book that I think is the most like is obvious is like Dumbledore's absence. Like he's not in the book that much, and it's because he's like trying to avoid Harry for. I mean, I think he intends to be a good reason, but really just as is the case with most Dumbledore things, actually screw stuff up more. I feel like, but like, so it's interesting that like they put him in the movie. I think maybe a little bit more. Like he gets referenced a lot in the books, but he's not there because they miss him at the meetings of the Order of the Phoenix, and then he doesn't see him at certain things, and so it's almost like we should have had more of those references instead of seeing him. But maybe they just wanted Michael Gambon to have screen time or something, But
it's also like he's in major moments that you need him in, and so when you cut out all the other stuff, And then also they didn't have him in the other
That's true.
movies
You only
enough
have the
that
major
you
moments.
notice that he's absent. Like if he had been in the other movies more, you'd be like, oh, Dumbledore's around a little bit more. And this movie, and they do try to show like
Very
that
good
he's
point.
ignoring Harry and stuff. But yeah, I agree.
They need
Yeah.
a good rhythm of it, because I think even in the books, it transitions so well from him being almost mythical and then having this whimsy / authority. And this is like, shiz is getting serious, you know? And I think this film, it kind of made sense for him to like be a little bit more angsty compared to his weird outburst in Goblet of Fire. But I still don't love the way it did. Like, there are still some line readings in the films that are like fast. I thought Seamus Finnegan, like, I'm like, oh, maybe that kid was just a bad actor. And up until now, all he had been asked to do is blow stuff up in his face and look surprised. Like, the way he yells at Harry is so fast and like, it's simple. Anyway,
I've got to have
there's
Isaac
There's a
do
lot
his.
of rapid fire dialogue. Like, we need to get this thing out so we can get to the next scene.
But
and it's
again,
just like,
I don't think
does
it was
feel
as
rushed.
bad as other movies that they did
No,
that in
no.
the Harry Potter movies.
But at this point, I'm just noticing it and I complain about it every single time.
With Gambon, if he had been nicer in the last movie, this would have been more of an adjustment. People have been like, whoa, Dumbledore's really standoffish. But you don't notice because he's such a jerk goblin.
I literally put Dumbledore was still a jerk in this movie, and like, there's nothing tactful about his avoidance of Harry, and he's just a jerk. But
So for the Howler, the worst omissions to me are Saint Mungus. Why
Yes.
can't I say that?
same
And-
Mungos.
Is it Mungos?
Mungos.
Same Mungos.
Mungos. I don't know why I thought there was a U. And then just the missing parts of the Department of Mysteries. I would have loved to see both of those things. Again, I understand why they were cut because those are like big asks to add like so much more, probably a few $1 billion more kind of stuff. But I did really miss those things. And just, again, I'm missing Dobby. But at this point,
Well,
forget
and
else.
was Creature in
Creature's
this?
in it, barely.
Here's me forgetting. I think with the Department of Mystery thing, I think this goes along with a lot of the dreams and the occlumency stuff. It has to really be wedged in. One thing I can think they did a good job of is how when the DA starts and ends, it's actually not that long. When occlumency starts and ends, it's not that long. But you feel they do a good job of making that time pass. But I think the TV show's huge opportunity is going to be letting Harry's dreams and fears and his isolation from everyone and from Dumbledore build, because that's going to help the department, and we need to spend that time in the Department of Mysteries. And yeah, it's just like a black-walled little bit, and it's just a fascinating place to maybe be weird.
Well, I just put that was some of my notes. Was just like there's so much time of just. It's very weird to think that in these 2-hour movies it's supposed to be an entire school year, right? You're talking 9-10 months, and just like Harry feeling like an outcast. Like for us, he felt like an outcast for 2 hours, right? But for him, it was like months on end where people weren't talking to him, people weren't looking at him. And so that's something where, like you talked about, they did the passage of time go with a few things, but that's something I really look forward to in the series is like with that additional screen time, how do you make it clear that he's feeling that and he's feeling, being ostracized? I still wrote that my guy Harry knows nothing. Like, someone sit this kid down, explain to him what the F is going on. Like, even if you're not telling him about the prophecy just yet, like there's other stuff going on that he's just like, has no idea.
Serious tries. Serious.
Serious, that's true. He's like wants to include him in the conversation and stuff. My only other thing, because I did write definitely that Neville found I put holodeck, the room requirement.
So true.
And there's a lot around that too, because it gets kind of referenced by other people, like in book 4 stuff, which I think is cool that it was like the seeds were planted. But it is also kind of like, wouldn't that be a thing? Like, wouldn't students don't keep their mouths shut? Like, over the years, people would have found this thing, and it would regularly be like, there'd be a schedule so I could get in there and use this for
in the Legacy
all
game,
kinds of crazy shiz.
in Legacy, you're just hanging out in there all the time. Like that's
Oh,
like
really?
your spot to
See,
go to.
So it's
it's
just
kinda
like
funny.
not even a secret. I mean, I
Well,
could see
I
teachers
think only
wanting to
you're
use
supposed to
it to
know.
like, you imagine that class that Ferenz did with the, he had made a classroom look like the night sky and stuff. Like he could have done that in the room requirement.
Oh, I
Like,
miss
so that's just something where it's cool that it exists and they find it, but it's also like this would be more commonly known. And again, they took away a moment for Dobby, where Dobby would have been the one to tell him about that. The other thing that I wrote down was the Azkaban breakout. I think this ties into something bigger for me because they blow it up. And this happens in the 6th movie too, where it's just like the Death Eaters show up and they just start blowing crap up. And like, okay, it shows that they're like menacing and that they're evil and stuff. And they, have no, concept of, being kind or not harming people. But it also just like it hurts the future. Like when they do it to the Burrow in the next movie, spoiler alert, that like that's not in the books. And then like later the Burrow's just fine. And so it's like what? So all that crap they did was then like and I feel like the same thing kind of applies with Azkaban here, because later on in the books, at least, it's still a reference point. It's still something that people go back to. And like not in the movies, because it's gone. They blew that crap up and they got out of there, And then the only people who got out of the Death Eaters but like there were a whole lot of people in Azkaban, I think. And so like where'd all those other people go? Did they just die in the explosion? So some of that I feel like kind of tears apart some of the world building, because it's like there's no real consequences to the actions, right? Of them just blowing crap up all over the place. And it also just like, it speaks a little bit to some of this balance between the power the Ministry has of like keeping the magical community like under control. Like, right, how do they do that? And how is that falling apart of the splintering of, Voldemort, all that? And so it's just, you throw out these wild things that might look cool on screen, but then it's like, that actually screws up the ability to like have a functioning society that's meant to be secret from the Muggles and stuff too. So that was my biggest howler. I think that was excessive, even though it looked
Can
cool.
I just say, I love it so much. I love the apparating smoky thing, the visual of it so much, and people hate that. But I do think kind of in
it's
the
not
book
accurate, Jimmy. You preach
I
accuracy,
know, but
and here you
and
are.
this is where I get weird about
It
the
is a
movies,
pop,
where I'm
Jimmy,
like,
that pop into existence.
for the sake of like a movie and representation of like what they're doing, and like the fact, because like if people are apparating in and out, it's not really like, it's gonna cook cheesy to be like, there they are here, there they are here. Like having the smoke is kind of cool. It makes no sense, but I do think it's a really cool visual, and I also think it makes them look scarier. Like the part where they like, Harry's all surrounded in smoke, and then like bam, they're gone, and they're holding one of the kids each. I'm like, that's a cool movie moment. So I love it. I hate it. But this is the part where the movies and the books split for me, and they're two different things. And I'm like, I'll take it. It's just a separate thing from now on.
Does. Well, that's something I've mentioned before too. Like, I think when it comes to like, I didn't love how like magic itself is portrayed in the movies. A lot of times, they wave their wand and then something moves, and like, there's no like, I don't know, in my brain, there's some kind of sparks or smoke or something that comes out that you can see the magic go from point A to point B and influence what happens next. That doesn't always make sense with every single spell, but like, that's one of those things where I do wonder if they'll come up with a cool visual way to do that. And I'm ready and willing to forgive them if it's not 100% accurate, because it's a different medium. I can get you there.
Yeah. And now they have the time to do that. And that's like my point with the movies, is that they don't have the time to like really build up that fear or make them see scary. So I think it does look cool, and I kind of like it, but I also get why people don't like it. But yeah.
Like, I like that they have the masks and stuff. Like, they do say that they have masks in the books, like in the Quidditch World Cup, and then I think when they appear before Voldemort at the end. Maybe I'm making that up. That's crazy, but I just think the visualization of the apparating, it took a long time to grow on me, but I kind of get it. But I think they need to just pop up out of nowhere. I'm sorry, get over it. And they can't copy that now. That can't now be the standard.
Is there a way to differentiate between the two? Is there popping up somewhere, and then is there coming in as a smoke person? I don't know. Like,
yeah, because that's like flying. Also, don't
they're flying.
Apparate in and not.
Well, I talked about this in another podcast. I broke down all the movies, but it's such a big deal in the book that Voldemort by 7 somehow learns to fly on his own. Like, it's a huge thing. Like in these movies, the freaking Death Eaters are just flying everywhere. Like, that's the thing, because that's what they're doing is not really apparating. They're flying around. They're not disappearing and appearing.
Smoking.
They're smoking around. So it is. But it is what it is. Sorry.
The only other Howler thing, I think, there's no Quidditch, and I think that storyline kind of gets pushed to 6, but 6 kind of has its own story. So it's I want a full Weasley is our king. Like, I want that bullying. I want Ron to get bullied. I want to see that grade on him.
Well, it's not just him getting bullied, but it's him like learning to overcome it too. You know what I mean? To get that confidence in himself.
It's a big part of his arc.
Yeah, and you don't get that. He's still just the funny guy, and you don't really see that growth and stuff like that because we don't see him going through that stuff.
I have so many things that I wrote down as called little annoyances, but I think they're more like just little things that I'm going to want to change. And some of them have to do with the book, and I think that they can be finagled and worked in the TV show. So I'm excited to get to that.
Are those part pensive little things that could have been changed?
Yeah, I think so. I just have quite a little list, but let me do some. Let's move on. First of all, with the Dursleys, we need more Dursley time again, but I want them to get don't they get the invitation in this one to the garden show where they've won
yes, and that's
best
why they
garden.
leave. Yeah.
I think as Americans, it's important to remember that a garden is just a word for yard. So this is literally just how they manicure their little square of grass. Because when I was a kid, of course, I was picturing they have been Petunia's been gardening a nice garden. She hasn't. Luna just kind of showing up in this. This is a book thing too. She just kind of shows up.
I love her.
And she becomes such a big character that I'm like, can we get a little Luna mention somewhere?
That's what I wrote too. We just need a seed planted earlier on that she exists. Even though she's not important until book 5, she's there. She's weird. She's in the background. She's not a big part of their friend group yet. Okay, but the fact that she just pops up out of nowhere and oh yeah, this girl's really important actually. That annoys me. I think that's something they can fix.
Well, and I
think
have her as one of. I do think it's the best introduction to a character we have the whole time of all the movies. They really take the time for you to get to know Luna. They use her a lot to explain Harry's feelings, but I like how they introduce her and that she's there. But yes, I agree. She's just this huge character that the only one that really just pops up randomly halfway through.
I gotta quit. Ivana Lynch has barely acted outside of this, and I think she was just born to play this role.
Yeah. Was she really an actress before, or she was just a fan of the books, right?
She was a normie who came to the open casting call, which is great. Normie, I mean in the most pleasant way. We are all very normie. This is not an insult, and I think a lot of times people especially people who were in actors when they were young, people don't see them be a super successful actor when they're older, and they think that's a negative. And of course, people probably want to flourish, but people don't always do it. And I'm she just did something awesome. She got to play her favorite character from an open audition call. She nailed it. And I don't know. I'm going to have to get an update on Ivana Lynch, but I just want to say she killed it. But this book has a lot of opportunities for characters. I think this could be a good Fred and George book.
Oh, yes.
Because I want Fred and George to say, we want to be part of the Order. I want Fred and George, they get stuck. They get the great send-off. But I want the moments where they're getting frustrated, and I want the moments where they're setting up their business. That could be so well explained, the growth, because it's all montage, the whole puking pasties and them testing stuff in the common room. It's there, but it's really glossed over. And I think there's such a chance for them to be really fun.
And I think it's a good explanation of how OWL's work and Newt's work and all that kind of stuff, especially for us.
Career advice.
Yeah. Us in the US,
face off between
that was a good one.
McGonagall and Umbridge.
But I do think Fred and George too, though, because there's so much about, because they just are jokesters in the movies, but they're actually really smart, right? There's certain things that they do that even Hermione's how the heck did they do that? That would require a really powerful spell. And so they're not book smart, they're not get lots of owls smart, but they're gonna go make their freaking money and stuff. Yeah, because they're
calling them owls. I hate it.
There's a dot between each of those letters.
Also, why is Nigel a character here when we have the Creevy brothers? Hagrid's cabin has moved even further away down an even bigger hill. I kind of forgot that happened even more.
Hogwarts is on a cliff now.
Yeah. A really good. Yeah, this is just something that was missing. I don't know if it was a change they could have made in the film because they did have to condense it down. But is it Mariana Edgecombe, Cho's friend? I want Harry to Cho and go on that awkward date because I think it's
want the date.
J.K. Rowling's best relationship writing, her realest 15-year-old boy writing, and I want that friendship. She's bringing that friend, and the friend turns out to be the mole. I'm that's so real. I need that little moment. I think
the tea shop is so
whole
cute.
Thing is so. It is,
in my
but
head.
The whole thing too, it's so complex too, right? Because it dwells for a moment on the fact that her and Cedric were this thing, and they weren't even that serious, I don't think. But then he dies, and they were still, together, and so she's all conflicted about it. But there's so much I don't know, just explaining of how hard it is to be a teenager and start dealing with complicated feelings and stuff, and then him just trying to be the guy who is kind of involved in the situation because he saw Cedric die, but not really, and he still likes her. That stuff is so crazy, and it would be really good to spend some time on that and just kind of understand what everyone's feeling in it, because otherwise you you get the kiss, and you'd like more Cho, because it's not just him having his first kiss, it's him having his first like relationship, and how complex and messed up it all gets, and then falls apart. Because I think that was most of our first relationships, right?
The way he screws it up, and the whole like Hermione thing, the way like I was always wanted to shake Harry, but I think that's good, and I think it's realistic.
Well, and I also think, like to Steven's point, it's realistic and so teenagerness, but also it's mixed up in the fact that like this kid has so much weight on him, and so of course like this is just normal trying to like date a girl, but also a kid just died, and you're depressed about that, and she's depressed about that, and like it's just.
Well,
so
there's this.
How
it's like yes,
life
all
is.
this regular teenage stuff happens, but it's also he's Harry Potter, so there's like a Dark Lord involved, and there's murder involved, and like all this, his destiny is all involved. So it just takes that other level. But you're right, like there's the normalcy of it, and then like and you add on all this other stuff, and it very much helps you kind of get a peek into Harry's brain and why he's so angsty and ticked off for this whole fifth year.
Hormones, man. In the flashback, James's hair is really light. It's not black. That bothers me. And then flying, this is a book problem. Flying from Scotland to London on a thestral or a broomstick, which is mentioned multiple times because Dumbledore does it earlier in book 1, remember? That is silly. That is ridiculous.
Going back to our uncomfortableness we talked about last time. The broom.
Yeah, not only is it silly and far and uncomfortable, but have freaking... the Flu Network, you have Portkeys, you get Apparition. There's just so many things. And like even the Apparition thing, I think they explained later on in the series is a point where you can only apparate so far. So like to travel the first chunk before you can apparate the last one. Can't you just apparate and then apparate again? And then like
you have to like
can only
know
go so far, like
where you're going. I think.
That's true, but like
see it.
Explain that shiz, you know what I mean? Instead of just being like, oh yeah, they just flew from one end of the country to the other. Because like, yeah, Harry can't perform magic, but if he needs a broom that already had a charm put on it beforehand, or, an animal that can fly, then he can also use a Portkey that had a charm put on it ahead of time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Simplify here, people. Simplify. Not that I want them to change that for the series, but they should have done it. JK should have done it when she wrote the book.
Did you guys have any more pensive changes before we move on to some positives?
I just had a few. I would want more Tonks, and I want her character to develop better in general, her and Lupin, but really her. I wanted more information about the prophecy, and these are all the easy changes. Like, obviously, there's big things I wish were there too, but then also Dumbledore's explanation at the ending. I want more of that. I want him explaining more of why. And like Dumbledore in the book, he starts crying. He feels so awful. He blames himself for Sirius's death, and he does screw up. And I think that's a great part of Dumbledore's character. And he admits that he screwed up and that he handled it all wrong. And I just wanted to feel that more instead of like a 2-minute conversation. I don't even think it was 2 minutes. Steven?
Yeah. I think the other things that I want to, and I don't know that it's an easy fix, but I think it's an important one, is what I was talking about before. And that's just like this careful balance that like the ministry functions under in order to keep the secret, from the Muggles. And that it's really important that people like influential figures like Dumbledore are on board and Harry Potter are on board. I think there's a lot to that when it comes to like, you get to book 7, everything where Scrimgeour's trying to convince Harry to come to the ministry, just pop in every once in a while. Like they need people in the magical community to feel like we're all working together, we're all in this together. And this really starts to fall apart because Dumbledore, isn't aligned with the ministry anymore, right? So everyone who follows him, before they were all kind of heading in the same direction, he's kind of going the direction he thinks he needs to go, and they have kind of assume worst case scenario for everything, and that he's trying to take over the ministry and stuff, and he's not. But it's just how that all splinters apart, and that in order for that to work, in order to understand that falling apart of their society, because like we see that in Hogwarts, it's like a microcosm of that, but it's the whole wizarding world is splintering, right? And we don't get that because it hasn't been established in the movies, right? And so the news thing is kind of cool to get like a peek at like the newspapers and all this stuff, but it really does come down to like, how does this even function in the first place? And so that's something that I would really like to see as part of the world, and that's the build up to the 5th book, of course, or the 5th year, where it starts to fall apart. So they need to insert that early.
Well, like you learn so much about how the world works in this one. You get your peek into the Ministry of Magic, you get a peek into the hospital, you learn about the past. Like how great would a flashback to the First Order of the Phoenix, during Voldemort's first rule be? That would be really cool. Like you get a lot of foundational pieces. And I think the more that you build that underlying world, because here's also where it's tipping and we're seeing it fall apart. So we're almost gaining value and foundation while we're also seeing that's what's at stake.
There's a careful balance too, though, right? Because you can't just have tons of exposition, right? Where you have Luna or Harry or, Hagrid over just explaining stuff so that the audience can understand it, right? Because it gets a little tedious to always have that new person who doesn't know so they can explain things to the audience. But there's really good ways to do that still, where people they have a conversation about something, right? And we as the audience have to then connect the dots, right? And so it can be more natural, I feel like, but still give us a lot of that underlying stuff of what's going on, like conversations about Rita Skeeter being a pain in the ass and stuff like that. So I think it's all doable, but it is a careful balance. But it's needed because that's part of building the world, right? Is understanding, like, to a degree, like, how can we even pretend that this whole, like, society exists, hidden from the Muggles, but in the same world, it has to be laid out and explained.
I think, like, we can't over-explain past what's in the book because Harry doesn't know, and that's a huge part of this, is that Harry knows some of it.
Someone needs to sit that kid down and tell him some crap.
Well, it's too late for that. But that's the whole point of it. That's where this isolation is built from, is that he doesn't know what's going on. And we have to learn with him, too, because it is still the point of view of, like, now a teenager, but a child. And him, like, but I do think that's a great thing about the book for kids. It's like, it teaches you about, like, the real world and how complicated things get when you are an adult and when these things happen. And obviously that's happening to Harry earlier because the chosen
sticking
one.
to what you know is right, even though it gets hard and everything else gets, complex, and there's all this pressure to go do things. Yeah, trusting your gut, going with what you know.
Harry
is right,
really has to go. Starting here, this is kind of like a little bit of his break from Dumbledore, obviously, like opposed, but he's like so lenient on Dumbledore and on Sirius and these adults in his life to like teach him these things, and that he's doing what he thinks is right because it's what Dumbledore wants done, and him getting to the point where he's like, I'm doing what's right because I know what needs to be done, kind of a thing. So obviously coming of age.
He's growing up. All right, I'm going to go on to some good things. I don't know if I'd call this a change, but the time that we spend at the beginning, even though it's also truncated, the tunnel that he's in with Dudley, although the playground there at the beginning, that makes no sense in Surrey. It looks so gray and weird. And anyway, but like that Mrs. Figg, who was also a really great actress in Black Doves this year, if anyone saw that, like that sequence, and then all the gratuitous London flying over the Thames, Grimmauld Place, that like I can literally picture now that kind of gated bit around like across from the houses, like that is so London, and I would have not known that before, like that, because I always thought that was a bit of an odd placement, but love the gratuitous London. They shot in Westminster Underground. I was like, that's the first time I've truly clocked it, and that even though I've been in there so many times, and like I like just them going into the phone booth to go in, like I thought there was just a lot of fun, and they fit in this quirky, maybe gratuitous Londonness just for the sake of it. And I think Daniel Radcliffe I think he's overall good in this. He's asked to do a lot of emotion, so if you don't buy bits of it, I don't blame him that much because he's being told to be so angsty. But also, I think this might be Daniel Radcliffe's hottest. I think this in the next one, he's out of his awkward phase, but in Deathly Hallows, it kind of already looks like a weird old man in some ways. So peak Daniel Radcliffe, and then of course, the best of this is Gary Oldman and Imelda Stanton. They're given everything that they could with the time they're given. You always want more serious. I think they could have been nominated for awards for Oscars for like these supporting. Like they are so spot on. They give so much to these characters in so little time.
People still hate
I want to
her.
see him.
People still didn't like her because of this role.
She played the queen.
Not great, but people were mad she was the queen because they still like people our age who like didn't know her before, really, But
she did a really good job because she does it with like this sweet voice, everything, but you love to hate her, right? And you just feel that powerlessness, right? Of like this evil person has all the control, and there's nothing Harry can do until Hermione figures out that he can create his own little secret society.
I mean, like I feel like I imagined her pretty well, but I feel like she was even better than what I imagined.
Something
really
that's
she seemed hard one to recast.
Incredibly accurate while also being just so on the ball. And there's so little of her that you miss. Like you get most of the famous Umbridge moments. I did notice they painted the walls in her office pink, the stone walls pink, which just always came off weird to me. But I want every bit of Sirius that you can get. And another great, I don't know if you call it a change, but adaptation choice was the family tree which is now a little bit iconic in 12 Grimmauld Place.
I would have that wallpaper.
That was
if I could.
a cool way to show it. Again, another visual way to show how all the wizards are interconnected and everything was pretty cool. I just put like more cool magic, like the phone booth thing was really cool, right? Where it's just like these things coming out of nowhere and everything. Right? Reminds me a lot of like, Harry stepping into the tent at the World Cup and being like, man, magic is awesome. I said before, the use of the newspapers and the news and kind of just communicating out like we would do here with a news clip, right? You'd kind of say, hey, fake CNN screen, scene. And they didn't have that, so they used the newspapers pretty well.
Series treats journalists terribly. They're all salacious,
She
horrible.
hates it.
They're just
Mitchell?
going with whatever side is winning.
I mean,
they
they
go
all
with
are,
like,
You
aren't
became
they?
a journalist.
That's-
What kind of Potter fan
no,
are you?
there are horrible elements of the media, but there are good truth-telling journalists out there. I have 2 journalism degrees. I don't use them,
There are.
but I believe in it. But it's just funny because at the end they're like, Dumbledore vindicated. It's like, yeah, you're the one who de-vindicated him.
Fake
Anyway,
news.
that's a word for sure.
Fake news.
So the other thing I put was Grop. I don't know. I like the idea of Grop. I just think that those scenes need to be longer. You need to get to know Grop. What, you don't like Grop at all? Or like the CGI was crappy?
The
What do you say?
CGI is horrible.
Yeah.
He's like
I
a
felt
toddler.
bad for him though.
I felt
I
bad
bought
for
the
him.
emotion.
I did buy the emotion, and his interaction with him is so different from in the book, which it's just like they never warm up to each other. They just kind of leave the poor guy in the forest, like whatever.
Well, and again, it's very rushed, right? So it's like
Yeah,
you
they
see him,
have
and
to
then
just
later
go.
he recognizes them, I guess, enough. And then the last thing I put is just the concept of like a secret order. I feel like from the books and the movie, it's just really cool to think like, hey, there's this group of people and they're meeting, in secret in this house or whatever, so they can, undermine the ministry and slow down Voldemort, all that kind of stuff. Especially because we get it twice, right? You get the Order of the Phoenix, and you get Dumbledore's army as well. And then the last thing is just that I felt like they did a good job of using the Dumbledore's army as a way to just show how much of a badass Harry is, like how he's gotten, because we focused on Harry, we don't really understand how good he is at magic compared to other kids his age. And as you start to see, like, oh yeah, they've never had a chance or a reason to learn how to do that jinx or that, hex or any of that kind of stuff. And so the fact that he's like able to take a group of like 20 kids and teach them all the stuff that he knows, it was a really good way to show that like guy knows his stuff, right? And so that he, deserves a lot of the respect. And these, it's not just a matter of him, being the chosen one. It's that he's actually, pretty good at this stuff and he can pull it off.
Okay, like Mitchell's last one, I have a lot of little things, so I'm just going to look through them. I thought the casting we talked about, so good. The montages, like from a filmmaking perspective, I love the way they're done. I love the juxtaposition because it like echoes Umbridge, like the like jaunty music, and she's doing this and it feels like light and hard, but she's actually doing like these horrible things and like slowly kind of taking over in a really bad way. Luna, just her introduction, everything. I love her. Okay, Big D. I'm just going to tell you folks that are younger, his clothes were so spot on for that year, for like 2007. He's like wearing up like, oh, that looks ridiculous. But I know boys who wear those clothes, but just cracks me up. Love that the Dursleys are in this movie. Love the whole opening shots, the white. And I get like, maybe that's not how it really looks, but I do think it looks really good. Mrs. Fig was so good. Not how I imagined her, but so awesome. I love the Black House. I would live in the Black House, like a little cleaner. No house elf heads on the wall, but I would live there. Ministry of Magic is amazing. Looks so good. Just not at all how I imagined it again, but it's so well done. I do love...
They've recreated that for the new park, and everyone says the queue is amazing.
Yeah. And you can
Epic
see
Universe,
parts
so
of it
I'm really
at
excited to see it.
the studio tour. You can see parts of that as well.
Yes.
There's some better Gambon moments in here. I like his plea to Fudge. I think that's a really good moment that says so much. Like you can feel in that moment that he's tried to like get through to Fudge several times, and this is his last like, dude, he's back and you're not listening. Malfoy's wardrobe, which is now going on from here out. He's in suits, business suits guy. Just everything about Umbridge, her beginning speech, her office, her wardrobe. I love the classrooms. I love being with the students more. I love hanging out in the common room. I love that little moment where they're sitting around after the kiss and Emma Watson has like that cute little laugh, although it's like either she's trying too hard to laugh or they just caught a natural moment, but I literally like that. The Harry, Luna, and the Thestral scene where she says the whole thing about lonely and that, I suppose
it's very sweet.
It's so sweet.
But
and
she also just carries raw meat around.
Yes.
I don't know.
But it's like sweet how like it's a good way of like saying this is what's going on with Harry. And it's just so well done, especially for someone who's not really an actor. Like, I think she does it so well. Love the Maggie Smith and Imelda like face off. Think that's such good acting. It's like, I don't know, Maggie Smith doesn't get really a chance to like act in these movies that much. Like, it's all like delivering this exposition or you guys are in trouble. And I just thought that it's a really good moment. The Trelawney scene of the courtyard, and then the DA and the High Inquisitor montage as well. I just think the montages were done so well, like explaining so much of what happens in the book, but it's just like quick shots of things. And like, yes, you want more, but for time, you understand why they do it. And they're giving us more of those side characters than they have really in any other movie with those.
You think people who haven't seen it, like, I should talk to Tim about this. Like, if he understood, like, I'm sure he got the crux of it. Obviously, they do, because they do focus it in. Not that they need every detail, but I wonder if those montages just glance past things that, like, you've got to really be on the ball to get some actual emotional developments at times. But they are done. They are made well. They do look nice. And as someone who appreciates the every moment from the book, it was nice to get anything of some bits that they couldn't dive into. And
I just think, I don't know, we should have Tim on sometime and go through some of these things. My one moment with that was Percy showing up in Dumbledore's office. People are like, what the hell's Percy doing
here?
We
need Percy's turn to the dark side.
Do they mention? I don't even know if they mention it at all. Like, Percy's just there, but and you don't know if he's good or bad because
he's
technically
there in the courtroom.
Oh, he's in the courtroom too. Technically, Kingsley's there. And so, like, maybe to just someone watching, they might think, like, oh, Percy's just pretending to be bad. And, like, no, he's bad. But just a lot of things. I do miss more of the Centaur stuff. I forgot to mention that earlier. And then I think that's really it. The whole Department of Issues
one
is
other
cool.
Good thing.
The fight.
The Dumbledore Voldemort fight was the one thing. When I remember at one point going through, like, the scene and, like, the book. And it's actually pretty close, but it also just, like, it looks pretty cool. And it gives you a sense of, whereas before you have other scenes where you have like, kids shooting spells at each other and stuff, right? This is like two, fully grown, wizards going at each other with all that they've got. And
the
there's
greatest
some pretty
wizards.
cool ways that they use magic to attack each other.
But I do want to see the giant statue protect Harry, like in the book. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, see that kind of. It made up for the fact that they don't go into some of those other rooms in the Ministry, and like you're supposed to really see that chase in those individual kind of battles and stuff. I think I will, like, Half-Blood Prince, spoiler, like, it does frustrate me how they don't have the fighting
battle
at the end. They almost kind of replaced it, and this big battle actually felt like it was like how Yoda and Dooku fought in Attack of the Clones. It was kind of like, ooh, we get to see them go at it because we know that Harry's going to have the big battle, at the end.
Well, and as much as I miss the other rooms and stuff in the Ministry, I will just straight up say, like, it makes it a better movie just having this extended and doing all the cool stuff within this battle than having all the other stuff. But like the glass, like breaking and like sharding up like the picture of Fudge and like him turning that into sand, like it's just so cool. And like in the whole like possession kind of scene thing, which is a little different.
I didn't know about the possession thing. I did think that was a little.
I don't know if somebody who hadn't read the books would get that. That's the one thing I was thinking about that. Like, do they understand like what's happening here that he's actually trying to get into him?
In the book, he's not really possessed. I guess in that one moment, he kind of is. And isn't it like the snake that does it? I can't remember. Anyway, throughout the movie,
I thought it was more he was in his head than possessed. That's the thing is, I thought it was for the visuals.
In the book, it's more he's just their heads are connected. Their minds are connected. The movie, they translate that by making it look like he sees him at this train station. He does that little head weird thing, Harry.
They love that shot. That was in so many promo things. Shot. The Voldemort in the suit at the train station. They're like, this is great. And it is a good visualization of it.
I know a lot of people dislike that, but I actually think it was a really good idea and a really good way to like show what's going on with Harry. So I kind of like it. And I think Daniel Radcliffe in this, Mitchell, you talked about the acting. I get so back and forth on it. There's some scenes I feel like he's trying too hard and it's just kind of awkward. And there's some scenes where he's like, you can see the growth. And I do think all the scenes he has with Gary Oldman, I think maybe he like stepped it up or Gary Oldman helped him, but like he does really good in those scenes. There's just something about that.
That does make me think somebody has mentioned that I did miss, and it has to do with kind of just that development of the side characters, but the DA is all about people like, Luna and Neville and Ginny, like, who don't really know all these spells, learning them, and like they're Harry, through Harry's tutelage, they move. And so this is their opportunity where like, they're fighting off like grown Death Eaters and everything like that, and not particularly well, like they barely make it out of there, but like they hold their own. And I think that's really important. And we don't get to see a ton of that because they're like as a group, and then they're. So I would like to see some of those individual moments because in book 5 and book 6, it's kind of like, hey, this is why when you get to again book 7 and the Battle of Hogwarts, like the fact that they would need or they shouldn't even bother to try and stand up to these guys, right, and fight against them, like they have the chops to do that because we've seen it develop over time.
Like in the book, they're beat up at the end of that scene.
Well, like, Hermione almost like dies. Yeah,
and Ron's like brain take to. And I do think it's sweet though the moment they're all standing there and Harry's like, "You won't know love." Like it's cheesy, but I think it's really sweet. Like with that, like Hermione's right cheesy. There. It is cheesy though, but the ends of all these movies are cheesy.
I've always felt like the prophecy and the information and the weapon and all the way that those things intertangle, I don't even think they're perfectly fleshed out in the book. So I think they did a pretty good job at communicating them in the movie, but all the prophecy and weapon stuff like doesn't always quite work for me. So I think
I'll be curious to see if there's a way they can do that same thing differently and possibly better.
But
I don't know how you
would have the prophecies fall down.
Well, and remember, this was in the heyday of 3D, and so the last 30 minutes only of this movie were in 3D, which is kind of cool. So it was like when they started flying the Thestrals was when it switched to 3D. I have an idea though because love is the ultimate answer, right, to everything. I think Voldemort, the real secret weapon he's looking for is love, and we can have a bottle episode of Voldemort looking for love because he thinks that will be how he beats Harry if he falls in love with someone. So he stops being horrible for a bit. Yeah,
make it a baby.
That's true. Shout out to Helena. We haven't mentioned her yet, but she does. She's so sinister.
And
she's so fun and mean. She's so evil.
She was very different than what I imagined, but it was great. Yeah.
Well, and when they cast her,
unhinged.
Like I love her, and like when they cast her, I was excited, but I was like, oh, I just don't see it. And then like that first shot, you see her in Azkaban, and she's like, I don't like. Oh my gosh, I love her so much. It's so good.
Let's move on to the Marauders map. So looking forward, before we plan out the whole season, we've already kind of covered some key things that need to get expanded. But like, I think Harry's interactions with dreams and occlumency and his isolation and the way that builds and all the serious stuff does pay off in the movie, but I don't cry when he dies. And I think I'd like them to build it up so I cry. And so I'm curious, what do you guys think are the key things that they need to spend more time with?
I think it all comes down, again, to character and relationship building, like just making sure that we know these people and we care about them, because then everything they do matters more, right? And so just spending time with them. And I think the world building piece is just spending time with them in the world and understanding, like, hey, what's it like day to day instead of Hogwarts? And there is the aspect of magic and Voldemort looming over it all, but we also have to worry about grades and relationships and all this complexity and stuff, right? Normal teenager stuff. So I think a lot of that would be really great. Jamie, you go ahead before I talk about my bottle episode ideas.
Okay. I put like things like having Quidditch, kind of what Steven just said, but like the OWLs and how important that is, and just Hermione's whole story with that, everything about Ron, like just more of those things. Again, like I understand why they were taken out, but like let's put those in, and then everything about going through the ministry and just more DA time with those side characters. I do like how like they start the whole thing with like Neville not being able to dispel and then end with him doing it and like celebrating him. Like that's a cute way to represent how much they learn. But like, I don't know, I kind of want more.
It's going to be so fun to see that over a season. Like they try and demonstrate that Ginny is like, when it comes to pure force, really like effective. With like, we're going to get to learn so much about the individual characters. We're going to get to see them kind of flirt, kind of develop things. We're going to learn more about Seamus kind of coming into it late. I just think that it's interesting because I wonder how quickly they can really get to the DA because they kind of really have to realize what's going on with Umbridge. And I think the movie did a decent job of it, but that was maybe my favorite part of the book's point period was them deciding to get it. And I was younger than them. So the idea that like, I was already thinking they were older than me and they got together and fought the adults and stuff. Like, I think
and
that's
just
incredibly
discovering
exciting.
The room of requirement. Like, I mean, Steven mentioned the holodeck also, but like, that's like my favorite part of Star Trek. Like, that's so cool to me. Like, I love those bits of magic. Like the stupid snowman at Christmas. I hate that so much. Or the Santa that's like flying through the air. That's the stuff like they threw in that they think people want. Like, no, I want to see like how you discover a secret room in a castle or, like that kind of magic is so cool to me. And so like playing that up.
This one there in the same.
Ghost is one of my favorite parts of all the books. I bawl at that when I read that.
Yeah,
Like
Neville's
whole
story gets kind of
they
thrown
explain it in
here.
this, which is like, at least they do that. I do feel like they give Neville more time than they have before, and he does kind of fill in for Dobby, which gives him more time, but like heartbreaking. And he's such an important character. He could have been the chosen one. He did not kiss Ginny. That's all I've got.
So that was my bottle episode idea. I think that like they should end an episode with like them leaving Hogwarts after Harry sees the dream, right, of Mr. Weasley being attacked. And then they should jump straight. The bottle episode should be just those events, right? So they have a scene in Sirius's kitchen because that's the only place they go, and they're just waiting and like agonizing over what's happening. Then they spend a good chunk of time in the hospital doing the restaurant, and then they come back to the Sirius's house for Christmas. I think that you get like 3 sets there, maybe even 2, where they're just like in the hospital learning about all this stuff, meeting all these people. I mean, maybe they still include the Lockhart thing. I don't know if that's absolutely necessary, but it is what takes them to the room, right? That's how they end up where Neville's parents are staying in that ward and stuff. So that's what I would say. Like, I think that's a good place to spend a lot of time and a lot of development and just to see what it's like to be in that world and feel some of that agony of like, is their dad even alive?
Is their daddy?
I have a weird bottle episode idea, and I don't want them to do it, and I don't like this chapter of the book. But I think it screams bottle episode. It's Hagrid and Maxine going to the Giants because it's what's that?
They just talk about it, right?
Yeah, but like that's why I think actually going, and if Hagrid kind of starts it out by talking about it and then them showing the whole thing, the whole like, oh, we're giving them gifts where we're trying to work through their culture, but it would be, and it kind of builds the world in a way. You are learning about this non-human thing and how their society works, and they like all got kicked out of Britain at some point and stuff. I think it's really interesting to think how that would work and
cool,
why they're trying to do it.
Remember for a while they did like web series alongside the show, and so you'd have like The Office, right? And you'd have like every week you'd have like a short little webisode that's just showing what Ryan and Kelly are up to, off in the on their side of the office and stuff. That could be kind of cool. Like over the course of the story, you can kind of get peeks at like what Hagrid and
too expensive.
Adam.
But
awesome. I mean, a lot of it is them walking around in the freaking forest, right? And then you have the giants pop up, but not that often necessarily, depending on how you do it.
So my idea, how in the movie, as soon as that happens, Harry runs off with Snape to do occlumency lessons, which is like not how the book is at all. Like they go home first and then they eventually do that. And that feels really rushed to me. I think that'd be a really cool bottle episode. Again, I don't know if any of my bottle episodes have actually been what you can consider a bottle episode, because this could take.
It's supposed to be one set, technically.
Yeah,
actually.
One set, the same actors, maybe some people coming in and out, but there's flashbacks to this. But I think it could be actually this would be a big ask for like a 15-year-old actor, but them going back and forth and into the flashbacks and like arguing, trying to do these lessons. I think that could be kind of a cool bottle episode. And also, it just reminded me how big of a a-hole Snape is. Like, sometimes we forget, like, oh, Snape did all these good things for Harry behind the scenes and all that stuff. But, like, man, he treats that kid like crap. And this is, like, the worst he treats this kid. It's during these lessons where he's the most vulnerable. But I think
he's, like, literally torturing him if you think about it.
But to help him get stronger. Help him get stronger.
I did my Kiss, Marry, Kill for Harry Potter on TikTok this week. And
our most watched TikTok.
There you go. And I want to do more of those Harry Potter ones. They're quite fun. But I killed Voldemort, Draco, and Snape. And I think Snape, people are like, oh, he's a hero. Like, Harry names his kid after him. I'm like, well, Harry's an idiot. And he did some heroic things, but mostly he was a bully and an idiot. And he also got bullied and had like a bad home life. So like, I feel bad, but mostly he's a bad person. Let's not put him on a pedestal. Same with Draco. Like, he's a bully. Stop sexualizing little blonde Draco. Okay. Like, we got to get past this. But that's just how I feel about Snape. But Snape does, other than turn to page 394, his best line in the series he says in this, and I say it all the time. Do you guys know what it is?
During occlumency?
No, just in the
movie or the book?
I can't give a better hint. In the movie. It just says, obviously. I say it all the time. He says it to Umbridge when she's like, you were unsuccessful at getting the Defense Against the Dark Arts class while he's teaching potions. Yeah, so good. It's so good. It's his. It's his best one, and I'll
Alan
never
Rickman
forget
for
it.
me.
Oh,
Best-
you know
best
what else
case.
was in a montage that's not clear is Draco's little goon squad. I can't even remember what it's called off the top of my head.
Inquisitorial Squad.
The Inquisitor, yeah,
That's
but
Umbridge's
Oh,
Goon
that's
Squad.
true.
that's
But
why I
they
would
mentioned
kill.
that. I don't know. I
Draco.
like it, but again, I'm mashing what I know from the books in those. So I wonder how people.
I did have fun.
are.
Again, I ranked this like 2 or 3. Like I had a lot of fun. And again, longest book, shortest movie to some degree. Like they do a really good job of getting everything in there. Maybe that screenwriter should have done more. Just kidding. I love you, Steve Close.
I think the next movie is the movie I would have thought someone else wrote. And I love the next movie. A lot of Harry Potter people, a lot of book readers hate this next movie, but as a movie, it's so good. Worse when it comes to adaptions, one of the best movies. It's so good. Anyway, we'll talk about it next time. Golden Snitch.
How many episodes do you guys think that this season should be?
Oh,
This is a long one. I mean, this has got to be at least 10 or 12.
I wonder if we're going to start hitting a standard 12, except for maybe the last one they do like 7 and 7. It will definitely be a 2-parter, but I wonder if like 4, 5, 6, they go 12, 12, 12. I mean, I'd love more. Maybe they could do, I'm sure they could do a good job in 10, but I just think then that gives you less opportunities to expand on some new people's storylines, bottle episodes, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think we want more. We want accurate, right? So I think 12 is a good answer.
well, it depends.
Let's just say 20 for every season. Let's just do
35.
22. It was normal.
One
back
episode
in
a
the day.
page. It just depends kind of how they do it. Like, are we going to be jumping back and forth from classes to classes? Or are they going to try to do the DA kind of stuff really all in one episode and then maybe just mention it as they go?
I will kill them.
Yeah, but if we're really going to spend time hitting all these things, I definitely think 12, maybe 10, because so much of it happens in Harry's head. But like, it depends on how they're going to show that outwardly. But so much happens in this book. There's Thestrals. There's the freaking flooding. I forgot about that when you were mentioning things that
Yes,
mean
we get to
different
see the
things.
punting.
Is it called punting or booting?
Punting.
Punting. And like, I literally learned this like 5 years ago because of a TikTok.
Yeah.
When someone's
Same.
like, here that means rowing someone. And us Americans thought that Filch was kicking the kids over the little
I
pond.
literally came here, and my friend who lives in Cambridge was like, yeah, we'll go up to Cambridge and we'll go punting on the river. I'm like, what? What? And then I'm sure I read it in a meme or something, but it is.
I did
Yeah,
see a
it's
clip
crazy.
from that Meghan Markle show that they call them ladybugs. No, what do they call them? Instead of ladybugs, they call them ladybirds or something. What do they call
Yes,
them?
that's a thing. I don't know what the exact answer is, but Hannah and I do call ladybugs different
And
things.
I'm like, I think they say ladybirds, and I'm like, it's a bug anyway. But I really don't understand some of the things like punting. I get some. I don't. Candy
Some
floss.
of them were cute, and some of
I
them are
was
just
very excited to
confusing.
go
So you need to
somewhere
tell them to cut it out.
When I saw cotton candy there to go up and order candy floss, I was very excited about that because that's cute.
Well, the big
Well,
one for
I
me
remember
was
too being confused
sellotape.
about like, there were
Sellotape.
times that I was confused. Like, is this a British thing? Like they call it this, or is this like a wizarding thing where they have a different word for it? But most of the time, it turns out
Well,
it's British things. They don't-
And the confusing part is that in the books, especially in the first two, a lot of those things they changed to American, like they say soccer and all that stuff. But then when they don't do that, it's confusing because it's like, wait, we're supposed to like, if they had just stuck with like the British way, we would have just learned. We would have learned.
Well, I think like jumper was the first one that I did learn. But yeah, so you guys know in the second book, Ron tries to repair his wand with spellotape. There's a brand here called Cellotape, and I only learned that when I moved here. So I have some Cellotape in my. I should have brought it out for a visual representation, but yeah, Cellotape, spellotape.
So
had to learn a lot of
spellotape is a
things.
play on the word cellotape. See that?
Yeah,
That's
a
makes
very
more sense
direct
now.
one, actually. Yeah.
Like pants and
Um,
trousers.
Things you learn.
I would have known.
Well, yeah. And because pants, they think refer to underpants, I really have to be careful with that one. I say trousers more. I've said trousers more in the last month than I had said in the first 28 years of my life. And why? Because I regularly talk about pants, and I have to be careful here.
They think you're talking about underwear.
They call underwear
That's
pants.
hilarious.
So your underwear are called pants there.
Yeah.
So
Not
some
underpants, did I use
things
the word
work, like
under?
if you say liar, liar, pants on fire, or you're flying by the seat of your pants, or you pull down your pants. Like a lot of the phrases actually work for both. It's very confusing.
You're showing a lot more, I guess, if you pull down your pants.
Yeah, pulling down pants is a different level when you're talking about showing them their boxers
Um,
versus their goodies.
I have 3 notes that I didn't use.
Oh, go for it.
Ready? First of all, Umbridge calls centaurs half-breeds. Centaurs are a species of their own. They're actually not because a man and a horse had intercourse. But I do wonder, because of Umbridge's
That's what you
clear
think.
psychological
Where did the
issues.
first centaur come from?
What
though,
her
Mitchell?
kinks
What
are.
happened there?
I don't know. That's a good question, but we know, because we know that horses and humans can't procreate now. It's like how zebras and mules can make a zebra mule, but then, or like a donkey and a zebra can make a zebra donkey, but then that zebra donkey can't reproduce. I don't think
Like
a
a
human.
That's what
liger.
a mule is. A donkey and a horse, when they mate and have it's a mule, and mules cannot reproduce.
Like a
from my
liger.
understanding.
Like a
Yeah,
liger,
like a
which
liger.
I
They
didn't
can
think was
exist,
real.
but they can't reproduce.
Remember Napoleon Dynamite?
I have one more silly note and one more important note. The silly note is, what if we had throwback logos? Like, what if they, like, one of the kids was just wearing, like, Nike paid for, like, one of the Muggle-born kids to just, like, on a day when they're not wearing robes, which, by the way, the costumes are really well done in this film. Like, someone
the
just
hair.
wearing Nike.
Good hair.
Also, they say that Dean is a fan of Wolverhampton Wanderers. Like, what if he's wearing a Wolverhampton kit? I think that would be good. I'd pro. I also thought, what if they use pop music in this? Like,
90s pop music?
90s pop music
Spice
in Harry
Girls?
Potter. I actually
That
think
could be fun.
I would like it. And my serious note is that they kind of brush past at the beginning when Molly says he's not your son, Sirius. But that's kind of a critical through line that I think
And then
they
James.
do bring it back at the end. They do it well when he calls him James at the end. So they need to keep that. But I thought, ooh, that was one of those rush slides where I was like, I wonder how many non-book readers kind of pick that up, because that Sirius Molly is actually a really good, I think, healthy conflict. But Harry also has that love from both sides. This movie balances the playful side, and the serious side. Like, it's angsty, it's angry, the dreams are creepy, but then they're having all this fun. It's actually, I think, as a season of television, going to have a great balance before the war really gets going. I think 5 and 6 are key in that, whereas 4 is pretty fun right up until the end.
I agree. A lot of people complain about this book being too depressing, and I just don't agree. I think Harry's is depressed, yes, a lot throughout it, but there's a lot of fun things. And a lot of that is from like the Weasley twins and like these cool, exciting things happening. But I want to go through some of my extra notes since Mitchell did.
Yeah, dude.
I
Sorry, I
love
cheated.
I love the blocking in the Umbridge and McGonagall scene where like McGonagall steps down. It's just like a good interpretation of like that Umbridge is taking over the school, like just from a nerdy like film perspective. I love the "look at me" that Harry yells at Dumbledore. I do think that's a really good moment. Some people make fun of that moment, but I think Daniel Radcliffe does that really good. Harry. Oh, and then I do miss like when everyone gets knocked out in Dumbledore's office, like not having that. Did I mention this? Not having friends and stuff. I don't love. I just think that would be cool. But the centaurs and I don't know, like for how much I love the dragon in the last one, the CGI in this one did not age well. And I actually think when I first saw it, and the stupid, again, the Santa.
Like the werewolf we had said was bad in 3. But werewolf, I will say, they say in the books that werewolves and wolves look really similar, which is not the case with a lot of werewolves in different IP. So they actually kind of probably did it how it's supposed to be done, but it just looked
weird.
Just looked rough.
I love this moment on the bridge when they're coming back, I think from the DA meeting, and Hermione makes that remark about Cho, and Jenny gives this look to Harry.
Yeah.
I'm sure Bonnie was directed to do it, but I love that moment because it just says so much like, oh yeah, remember that she used to have this crush on Harry, and that like this is still an underlying thing.
And it lays the ground, like Steven talked about how we want more groundwork laying, we want more characters maybe seated.
And just little things like that.
I think that was some of the only, And Bonnie Wright was obviously not given very much to do, and she couldn't help that she was taller than Daniel Radcliffe, but I'm hoping that they
and I love
do more for Ginny.
The ending scene of this one, I actually like. They all end with this little cheesy, like someone saying like, "Oh, this is gonna happen," and like on this positive note. But I actually really like this one and how it's like all the kids walking off at the end. And I do want to say, I think of the 3, I think Rupert has the best performance in this one. He isn't given a lot to do, but his reactions to things. Oh, I hate that scene where Harry gets to Grimmauld Place and he opens the bedroom door and she's like, Harry! And she jumps. I'm like, calm down, Hermione. That whole scene is some of the worst acting, but I think Rupert's the only one that does okay in that scene. And I will say, I will be more critical of the acting here on out because they're getting older. And I felt bad when they were littler, but now it's kind of like, okay.
Well, Rupert's next movie, he gets to ham it up in 6. So
yes,
it's good that he put a good shift in here. And yeah, when Harry shows up and he's kind of annoyed, he's not annoyed, he's really angry. I don't feel like we got that isolation at the beginning. He hadn't really said, like, we really need him to feel that he hasn't been getting letters from anyone. But anyway.
When they first go to the ministry, Harry and I think it is, literally the music sounds like Les Mis if you go back and listen to that. But I do want people, if people are watching along and you're going to watch Half-Blood, listen to the score. It's the best score. I love the score of that movie. It's so good. So here we come, Half-Blood. Sorry, there's my rant.
Steven, did you have any final notes?
No, I covered all my notes. I jumped in earlier with them. But, I mean, we are just talking kind of golden snitch now. So as far as, like, most critical storytelling decision, what's the one thing they have to get right in season 5? What do you guys think? If there's nothing else, what do they got to get right?
Harry has to go through this really difficult time, and it's going to end on a bad note. He's going to lose someone, and he's going to have that conversation with Dumbledore. It ends really down. So I think they need to balance the mood of the season, but the primary bit of that is Harry needs to be going through a really difficult growth period without it dragging us down, with it being a storytelling element and a character growth element, but not just souring everything.
Right. Well, those happy moments are key, right, at the end, because when Voldemort does try to possess him or whatever, you know, the love that he feels for the people. So you can't skip over that, right? They have to have those moments of joy and friendship and love and everything, because that's a really important part of what separates him from Voldemort, right? There's a point where he thinks he might be turning evil, and this is like, no, this is what separates you from him, is your relationship with others, your ability to love.
Did you guys mention the
love.
tantrum he throws in the book in Dumbledore's office? I didn't miss it.
No,
I don't miss it.
I want that.
You do want him throwing everything?
Oh, I think it'd be fun.
I mean, if it's done
want him
right, but like with Daniel Radcliffe, I think it would have come off really whiny. So I think maybe if someone else does it. But is this also the book where he talks to Nearly Headless?
Yes.
I want that.
Yeah. It's very.
That's saying a lot of downer.
I know. Steven's like happiness, and I'm like, I want the depression. I want throwing things. Just kidding. No, I get it.
Him wanting Sirius to come back as a ghost is an important conversation.
Yes,
having
it is.
And it feels an unasked, like, people just take ghosts for granted, but why some people come back as ghosts don't. Like, I don't even know how much you really had to be thinking about that. And for Harry to be so desperate and want this person back so badly after he's already lost his parents, I think that's brilliant.
Cheers.
Well, it's that thing, though, too, because, like, that's real life, though, right? Like, it can be really sad and depressing, but you still have those happy moments in between, and so they're just finding that balance. But it's also part of, like, that's how you know the good times are good and the bad times are bad, right? Is because you've had the others. And so, yeah, it ends on a very down note, but I think there's a lot of opportunity in there to have some good moments,
there is
too.
lots of Luna, Fred and George.
That conversation with Dumbledore is so important because Harry starts off so mad. It's such a big moment for his character from going to like upset to we're on a mission now and we're going to work together. And it finally gives Harry some control over the situation and also some hope. And like, I'm sure also part of it is to like avenge his godfather's death. Like a lot of people have died in Harry's life, but this is like the first like death he's had to directly deal with. I mean, also Cedric, but this was like his hope was all in Sirius, and he loved Sirius. It's sad.
Yeah, Cedric was a little more than an acquaintance, so that was like a warm up for this, right? Like this is the guy who's
your godfather
mix between father and brother kind of mixture, best friend. You know, like that was his hope for having like a family life that didn't suck, and now it's
and like with
gone.
Cedric,
like that person you could go to for things.
Which also I want to be in the 4th series is like he has that ending moment with seeing Cedric's family deal with that. There's still like like this horrible thing, and obviously Harry's very upset about it, but now it's his family. This is his family to him, is Sirius. So, but there's a determination that comes from that conversation, and that's like a hope of like, okay, now I have kind of control, and there's a mission to complete now to kill this guy because I know the prophecy, which and you're right, Mitchell. I think even when I read the book, I was like, wait, I'm still kind of confused about what the prophecy means. Yeah. Which is, I think there's a point to that.
I think this book, like, it is the first one where, the war's not out in the open, but it's kind of on. Like, it's just great. I mean, each book really plays a critical role somewhere, but I think they've got to get the first few right to make sure that they can afford to make the rest and that there's an audience for the rest. But I think as we've talked about 4 and 5 back to back, it's really made the idea so tantalizing of having a full season to go through these much larger books compared to the earlier ones. And it makes me think back to like, oh, maybe they could do the first one in, I think they've already said 8 or 10, right? But I think it's just how much more we need to get out of these. I'm it actually, it makes me really excited. And hopefully we get some more news soon because we're running out of movies.
It's really
to talk
hard for
about.
me not to run to London this summer with the $0 I have and just try to go.
You have free
Me and
logic.
Mitchell.
You have free logic.
Mitchell, don't worry about the baby. Let's just try to go sneak on some sets, okay?
Oh, yeah. I have a baby coming this summer. There's already
Harry
my mother-in-law
Potter
and
will
then
be
my parents are
birthed,
coming.
and your baby.
It's too bad he's not coming on
Your
July
little-
31st because then I'd have to name him Harry Potter.
Harry Potter Marshall.
Nailed it. I was thinking tonight, apparently he was kicking a bunch during the musical. I was like, gotta name him Hamilton because I would never name a child Alexander. No offense to the Alexanders of the world. But I was like, just Hamilton. Just like Ham from Sandlot.
Very American.
Maybe his
Anyway,
middle name is.
Give that kid
Wait,
an
we saying
American
him,
name.
but we don't know the gender, right?
No, that's a good point. We actually don't know. But I don't like the girl names. I don't think I'd use Angelica or Liza or Peggy for
Peggy.
women names.
I'm
Because
calling the baby. How's baby Peggy doing?
last night we had some friends over from dinner, and they're like, "So you guys know the gender, right? But you're just not." And I was like, "No, we really have not found out the gender, but we have a nickname for the baby, and it's a male name." And so I use male pronouns a lot, and Hannah's like, "Remember, we don't know," and I'm like, "Yeah," because I'm trying not to get fixated on one, but it did make me think, Harry. I'll name a girl Harry Potter. That's fine.
Harriet?
Anyway, so
Harry
next
Potter.
week, well, first and foremost, if you guys want to contact us or follow us, please on all social media, we're HPTVPod, and we're having a lot of fun on those. And so please comment and say things, and if you have something to put on the podcast, email it to us at hptvpodcast@gmail.com. And next week, we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to do another quiz. This one based purely on 4 and 5, which I think is good. It's going to be like focused in a bit, and we've got the introductory out of the way. And I've got some ideas for a different format that I haven't passed by my co-hosts. So we're all going to have to do this again.
Veto.
but-
I veto.
No, hopefully Quizmaster will be back, but I just think there's a better
That's
Format.
named out. Quizmaster.
Quizmaster. I don't even remember where it went from there. MC Quizmaster. Anyway, and then after that, we're going to be doing Half-Blood Prince, which I'm excited for. And as we round out I act like it's viewed the last three of 8. It's not like it's then.
And then hopefully
yeah.
there's some news coming. Or we're going to
Yes.
go into the books, people.
Oh,
Chapter
I haven't
1.
pitched you guys on Fantastic Beasts yet. but
Oh, I'll do
I
Fantastic
kind of want to
Beasts.
do a rewatch.
I will do it. I'll
All right.
get more anger.
Well, thanks for tuning in to the
So I
HB.
spent the whole
TV
time on the
pod.
Howler with those.
Did you guys notice that the Howler changed just a little bit
Oh,
in this?
yeah.
I thought it still could have been the same thing, but just like a different color and this and that. But it did change a little.
I was
bit
going to say
in this
that the fire and the howler. I
Yeah,
actually like the other
better
versions,
fire.
I think. Oh, well, actually the fire, I don't like either version. I kind
The
of like
fire
the
and the
other
coals.
howler better. This
No,
one was too computery.
My thought of the chatting in the fire was that they were literally
Yeah, like you're supposed to see their
half
floating
fluid powder.
head. I want to see a floating head in that fire, okay, HBO?
I thought this movie was better than the last one, but I do wonder how much Gary Oldman got paid for that fourth movie where he's just facing the coals for 2 minutes.
You got to pay. Money.
Anyway, boats and hoes, join us next week for the quiz and any breaking news. We will be on the ball making a podcast as quickly as we can, and we'll be covering on socials. So meet us there also as well, obviously. Jamie, send us out.
Peace out, snitches.